podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Cardiff Central Podcast.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Cardiff Central Podcast. In the hot set as always is me, Harley, and I'm joined with Carwyn. How are you doing, Carwyn?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks, mate. Busy week for me with the 3 pods. But yeah, this is the last of them. So hopefully I'm not dying out my backside by this time. But yeah, not too bad. How are you doing?
Oh yeah, thank you for stepping in for me on the wrapper. Said I had a lovely birthday meal from my granddad, and he's done so much for me. I felt if I can't skip on a pod for him, who can I skip out on? So yeah.
Yeah, I picked up my baby champagne for calling Twickenham Twickers. I feel that was more of a note to Max Boyce's famous line rather than. I feel it was said in irony, but I just didn't say it well enough.
You need to phrase it as, or it's more affectionately known, Twickers.
Yeah.
Or as Peter West would have it, HQ.
HQ. Yeah, but yeah, and unfortunately didn't manage to get that bit in. So I've got my baby champagne, and yeah, my other apology for the week was I was a little bit strong on a certain kick from Cam Winnett. I meant to say a lollop into midfield rather than it was a dog shit kick. But yeah, it was a bit of a poor a lollop into midfield is a much better way of phrasing it, I feel.
Do you know what? I think if that's the only mistake he makes in his first international debut, I think you can be allowed to say it was a bit dog shit.
Yeah, that and yeah, he didn't make any other errors. He cried at the anthem, which is obviously a prerequisite of a Welsh player playing for Wales. That seems to be you have to be crying if you're starting lineup in your debut. You have to be crying for the anthem in some shape or form. The cameras are definitely going to try and spot it if you are, and he's had various interviews this week talking about him crying, which is obviously probably an interesting first week in international rugby. But yeah, I thought he was very good. So assured for a debut. I know Liam Williams has been full of praise of him as well this week, and yeah, fair play to Cam for stepping in and showing what he can do at the top level.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's nice. I think it's nice for people like ourselves who've basically been saying just chuck him in, like throughout this season, when with all the worry and the possibilities of putting Adams or Zammit at 15. It's like, no, Cam can handle it, and he did. So he's probably with the game plan England are going to play tomorrow on Saturday. Even it's going to be, he's probably going to be tested a little bit more. But I mean, seeing the sort of kicks and the pressure he gets put under at URC level, I don't think he's going to let anyone down.
No, I'd back him. Obviously, you're up against, in my opinion, the best catcher of rugby ball in world rugby in Freddie Steward. But which is a weird thing to claim someone is, but I do think he is. He's the best under the high ball. But yeah, I think Cam's flying at the moment, playing really well. You say I must say last week I did say that Josh Adams would start at fullback, but that was mainly to try and get all 3 of them in the back 3 because I'm still of the opinion that Mason Grady should be somewhere in that starting lineup. But yeah, we're where we are, and Cam obviously showed exactly why he's a specialist 15 and why he should be on the pitch.
But yeah, before we go too far into the selections for the game on the weekend, let's talk a little bit about what is as cliched as possible. And I feel like I'm bringing the phone myself and say what was definitely a game of 2 halves. In that we were completely absent in the first half, and then in the second half, it went mad. It went. You fill a team full of Cardiff players. You're gonna get a Cardiff style game. I think that's what we got.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what to say about that first half performance. I think, to me, my honest assessment of it was a side that looked like they were playing how they thought international rugby should be played. I don't know how else to explain it other than the Sam Costello kicking game that I've got a bone to pick with this throwing the ball back 15 yards for someone in the pocket to kick it up in the air, because lived it for years, constantly be called offside for it, because your forwards then automatically start advancing before your level chaser, which is normally your winger, has put them onside, and that is such an easy penalty to give away. That was the first bit, is the kicking game. A couple of really poor kicks from Gareth Davis, Cam, as we mentioned earlier, early in the first half. But then the line out was the other one. Those two, the line out for Wales for the past, I want to say 20 years, but probably more, since one man Wyatt probably, has been an inconsistent issue, that Wales relies so much on the line out for good attacking phase play, and getting over the gain line, and it just wasn't working. And then you add on top of that the lack of ball carriers in the backs, where Josh Adams is your main ball carrier with 6 in the first half, doing a job which isn't really Josh Adams' job. It was a recipe for disaster. That and a very good Scottish performance. I should say they were very good in the first half, with Finn pulling the strings, Tuipulotu looking brilliant, and their back row was impressive in that first half. But yeah, from a Welsh perspective, it was, I think Gatlin called it the worst, or near enough the worst first half performance he's had as a coach, and it looked it to me as well. So I think that's a fair assessment, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the lineup, we lost 6 lineups in total. I mean, it got a lot better in the second half. I don't know how much that was just Scotland stopped competing because they were down a man. Losing Richie Gray in the first half probably didn't help, because they were just throwing him up at the front and went, he's a big enough bastard, he'll catch it. And he did. I mean, we didn't help ourselves, because even when there was a contested lineup, you see like lifts weren't quite getting there. Like I know Ryan Elias got a lot of flack. But looking at it, you could see Wainwright's just not getting up as high as he should be, or he's just that little bit too slow. It looked like there was an issue with the back lifter, which got a lot better in the second half with Azarati coming on. And make of that what you will. But it seemed like and everything seemed a little bit too slow, and you can extend that to the rest of the pitch. Even when it came to trying to execute a move, it was just a little bit too slow. By the time we were throwing the ball back to Costello, who was too deep, particularly at the speed we were playing. Like, if you're whizzing that pass out before the defence is set, then you are probably going to get a chance. But then the kicks were a bit too long, so it was easy. So by the time Dyer got to the catcher, it had already been passed to Russell, who could dink it down. And, and that led to that 50-22, where Josh Adams had a very rare moment of madness. I mean, to be honest, he's on one leg as well, which I imagine that's I bet somewhere in his mind there's that rancor and he's just pissed off. Everything's going wrong.
Well, there was that bizarre situation. I don't know how much you knew about it, but obviously in the media we knew about it a bit more. That an hour before kickoff, there was set to be a team update from the WI. There had been rumours all day about Tompkins and Josh Adams being out. And then there was set to be a team update an hour before kickoff. And then there wasn't an update, which meant that it was still the starting team. And you're just like, this is clearly, what sort of shambles is going on there? That's not going to help things. And yeah, Josh's moment of gunplay, I must be honest, it seems to be, I think I said it on the wrap, that it was something that I don't remember seeing any of in his first 20, 30 caps, but is starting to come into his game a bit. You look at that moment against Argentina, you look at the moment on the weekend, there are these stupid moments that he's having. And, the question was asked, do you think that Gatland's right to call him out? I think he's spot on. I really do. I think there's only 5 players with more than 50 caps in the squad. Josh is one of them. I also think Gatland knows Josh's character, but I would say Josh is one of the players who has that Mike Phillips mentality of, if you're going to call me out and criticise me through the week, I'm going to turn in an absolute peach of a performance next week to make up for it. And I can see Josh doing that this week. So yeah, well, without getting into selection and everything, but I think that's probably why he's had the nod as opposed to his performance.
Yeah, I mean, I said it's just something that it does remind me a bit of what happened with Liam Williams towards the sort of middle of his career, where he started to just become a bit of, it became more about the aggro and things, and then he started giving away penalties before, like, towards the end, and he sort of for the majority of the time, he eased out his game and went back to what made him good. I do wonder if there's just an element of frustration about it. He has, he's been struggling for fitness, which means he hasn't been able to get the form he should do. And, and if he's there like that and your team's going backwards, he's on what would be the wrong wing for him, because the problem is we seem to have all left wingers, but someone needs to be on the right.
Yeah.
And because I said it's quite common, it's no secret Wales are better passing towards left. So, when we go from right to left, which is the reason why, George North and Cuthbert have, depending on the 10, have always suffered when they've been in the 14 and someone else in the 11. They don't look as impressive, and vice versa. And it's a bit frustrating. Again, he's being asked to do a game which isn't naturally his game. I know he's really good at the sort of pick and go off the rope with his explosive pace, but as an actual first phase carrier, not, that's, it's two different things. Like a dynamic pick off the ruck is one thing, but good thing, I think it's a game where we really miss having a George North or a Mason Grady in the 13 channel, or even, as much as I'm not a fan of him, Johnny Williams in the 12, is just having someone who can just take that, and they tried doing things with short line out, giving it to both of them, but then the Scottish defence saw both of them in the middle field. I went, well, that's who the ball's going to.
Yep.
But it did cause problems. I think second half he got a lot better. I think Azarati started carrying really well. I thought Teddy Williams had a bee in his bonnet whilst he was on the pitch.
Yeah.
He wanted the
break.
Alex Mann, I thought, was fantastic. Again, another player who I think has proven, we're right. I mean, it's why I've been getting annoyed with all the nonsense we've going into some selection talking about having David Jenkins at 6 or Teddy Williams at 6. Stop. I'm going to say this now. And if anyone who comments on the pod wants to call Purple Channels to get me, specifically me, Harley, now, stop putting fucking second rows at 6. Put a blindside flanker at 6. It's what they're there for. For the love of fucking God, just accept that you can have players on the bench from the wider squad who are good. Right, that's it. Sorry, I've been getting wound up by that all day.
I know you have. I know you have. We'll come to selection later, and I'll talk about what I thought might happen. But Alex Mann, I've been saying this since September, if not before, that he's a hugely talented player and should be pushing for international honours, and I'm so glad he performed so well. His tackle on Hugh Jones has been getting a lot, but I thought his carrying in the wide areas was good. Also, his decision making in the wide areas was good as well. Whether to pass, whether to hold on to the ball, and when and where to do that. It looked like an assured performance from a player who knows exactly how to play international rugby as opposed to a debutant, and that's the biggest praise I can give. I thought he was absolutely superb. I will give a shout out to Elliot D as well, who was brilliant off the bench in the pack, and fully deserving of all the praise he's had this week. Talk of his 47 caps and never letting Wales down. I think that's pretty much spot on. I couldn't think of a bad Elliot D performance, and then Thomas as well obviously changed the game. But yeah, I just wanted to go back a little bit to lineouts, because one of the things that frustrated me was there's been a lot of talk of this being a young, inexperienced Wales side, but some of the worst performers I thought on the weekend were the more experienced players in a way. Maybe they were trying to do too much. Your Gareth Davies he had a poor game. Let's be honest about it. Josh Adams obviously didn't have his best day. Then you're looking at Beard and Elias involved in that line-out situation, because, like you mentioned, there were issues with the lifters, but I was a bit surprised that Wales kept on throwing the ball to Wainwright at the back of the line or in the middle of the line. He was moving around a bit, but you've got Beard and Jenkins, who are big lumps, to be fair, to throw up in the air. I didn't really understand why they weren't being utilised, and it just seemed to be, in Wainwright we trust and stick with that, go for that, and that became easy for Scotland to mark him out towards the end. But yeah, that's probably the majority of the frustrations of the first half. The other thing I'd mention is my main bone of contention with Welsh team in the last 4 or 5 years is the lack of players able to turn the ball over, because there were 29 players who could only see the momentum going in one way during that first half, and then there was one player who was doing his utmost to try and turn that momentum around. That's Tommy Rafal. because Wales don't have enough jacklers inside. But that's a frustration I've had for 4 or 5 years and doesn't seem to be changing.
I mean, there is an issue with that because I think the jackal is becoming a lot harder of a thing to achieve because a referee's preference for the accepted. It's something we talk about in this pod a lot. There is definitely a swing because everyone's calling for this faster, more open game. The attacking side's getting away with a lot more than the defending side. So, jackling, you've got to be so shit hot on it. And I thought Tommy Raphael was fantastic, but for him to get these sort of turnovers, you do need a couple of people who can actually get players to ground quick, which again is where I think Alex Mann is coming into his own because he's, his tackle selection is 98% of the time fantastic. He said he was disappointed that he didn't get a full tackle on Hugh Jones, but knew the tackle would get him down.
I will also say, if anyone's seen his quote from this week, that is not good tackle technique because he said, "I just thought I'll try and get my head in the way," and I just thought, no, don't listen to that.
No, that's not what we do. That's the reason why Lee Harvey has so many concussions. But the fact is, that's why I said 98% of the time. That's part of the 2%. But yeah, it is quite hard. I mean, we are missing having someone like a Nicky Smith in the side who is good over the ball, a Dylan Lewis who's now been called up to the squad with Leon Brown injured, but not out of the squad because I think they're going to patch him up. Even if it's the last game, they can get him on for the last 20 seconds just to get that 25th cap and then he can bugger off or wherever. But yeah, we are missing it. But the problem is we've tried it before where we've tried to put lots of turnover threats and then it lacks elsewhere. Like, because as brilliant as Raphael is at turning the ball over, he's not a line-out option. So that, in theory, that can suffer. So you've got to make sure you've got an extra line-out option there. He's not a ball carrier, which is something we're lacking already. And it's great when you've got someone like Jack Morgan who pretty much does everything. But you think, and then you're looking at who our jackal threats are. Basically, what we need is Tina Stabir to become Welsh qualified as soon as humanly possible. So you've got a backline jackal threat. Liam Williams is fantastic at it, getting over the ball.
Yeah.
Josh Adams is more of a counter rucker really than an over the ball turnover, but it's still a thing. Owen Watkins, he did get one of ththese classic rips, which is another way of turning the ball over because it's not just getting on the floor. We're missing because I think having good jacklers in the backs is really useful. Like France have used it fantastically as well, and South Africa use it as counter ruckers because that's where you're not expecting it. Whereas I think people see, it doesn't always work against Raphael, but they can see it come in and they knock him off the ball, and it's happened to Wales consistently. Other than Josh Navidi, who I think is the only person who could actually take on a full 8-man pack and still keep the ball, you're almost always going to lose that battle.
Yeah, for me, it's just a thing of you need to have more players that. It's not necessarily picking players that are jackling threats. I'm not saying we should pick 2 sevens. I'm not saying that at all. I've never been a huge fan of that since the days of Warburton Tipuric. Really, I thought it was the wrong decision in the World Cup against Argentina. But then I just feel, as you mentioned, there needs to be a bit more saying to players, step up and put a jackal in. You can put a jackal in because I've seen a couple from Tompkins and Sarries, not many, but you look at the amount Donti, Fiku, Peno, and Dupont, but Dupont does everything. But they all step up with the occasional turnover, that French backline. And then you look at the Irish pack, for instance, Porter, Sheehan, McCarthy would do it, Tyburn does it. Then you've got your O'Mahony, Van der Fleer, Doris all stepping up with the occasional turnover, and they just add up. I don't see the same thing in this Welsh side where it seems to be, oh, you're the jackler, you're the 7. I'd like to see just a bit more open responsibility of, okay, if it's on, go for it. It's an opportunity, and putting blocks in place, clever blocks, obviously, and don't get penalised, but clever blocks in place to manufacture turnovers as well, because it's such a momentum killer for the opposition, and it's something that seems to be happening to Wales a lot, but Wales aren't able to do to the opposition. That's I could rant about that for days to come, but that's my main gripe at the moment.
And I'll put one counter on it, and then well, probably best we move on, otherwise we'll be here forever. But you do see it a lot with teams when particularly when it's a new team, new coaches. And remember, these guys, there's only the second Six Nations with this coaching team, and it's quite a brand new team. They do tend to only give 1 or 2 people the jackling because they're the ones who know what they're doing and know what the rest are doing, whilst everyone else is learning the system and getting used to getting over the ball. Because the worry is if you say everyone get in, then you're just going to tick through penalties. It was an issue with Sale a couple of seasons ago where everyone was going in. So, what's his face? Jim for the mind. The coach, Alex Anderson.
Yeah.
Basically stripped it back and said, right, it's going to be Tom or Ben Curry, whichever one's starting, and John Ross. They're going to be the only people who go over the ball. That got bedded in. All right, still some issues because some of them were still giving away stupid penalties. And then it's like, all right, our midfield can start going for it. And then they sort of built it. And then it was like, right, you can do it, And as everyone got more used to the system and when one to make that decision, so it's one of those, it should come, but give it time. I think dipping into selection, I think Elliot D's quite good over the ball, so that'll be quite helpful. Like I said, it's fine when you've got players who are used to it and do that as part of their role normally at club. If they're not necessarily doing it, but then, as I said, it's not just getting your hands on the ball over the floor. You can do counter rucks, and there is counter rucking to slow down the ball. There's holding them up in the tackle a little bit more. Yes, that runs a risk of a high tackle, but as you've got to target the ball and get them on there. There's rips. There's which actually our midfield quite good at generating. Certainly with Tompkins and Watkin, they're very good at ripping the ball. Which that can go 2 ways. Like that can work out really well for you if you can get a clean rip, or if it goes loosely, then it can cause hell. But that's thing. So yeah, I do get it. It is an issue. It does put us under defensive pressure, but I'd say not as much as the pressure we put ourselves when things weren't executed right. Even if they were the wrong tactics, the way we executed them was terrible. What do you think about that second half? Do you buy that Gatlin said go out and play, or do you think that was the player decision?
Yeah, I think they did go out and say go and play and go and enjoy. But I felt there was more intent at the start of the second half, and I think it all came from getting across the gain line. I do think the rugby is a simple game in that. Getting across the gain line is such a huge part, and is the main part, and is essentially. And Wainwright basically single-handedly at times stepped up and provided that go forward. Be it from restarts, we were already getting 10 yards further forward from restarts than we had been, and I thought that added an increased element. Why Scotland kept kicking to Wainwright when he was carrying so well, I will never know. But I thought Scotland performed poorly in the second half as well. I thought their discipline was just bloody horrendous. And maybe Wales got the rubber of the green with penalties, with the momentum of they're the coming backside. Just give them a bit. We've seen it in the URC year on year. This thing of maybe the underdogs getting the additional penalties in the second half when they're struggling and behind. But I thought Wales did at the same time put the opponents away. The driving maul, there were more smart things being done in the driving maul. We were, for one, Wales were actually taking the lineouts and making touch with kicks, so that helped. And then you've got the additional brilliance that was Thomas Williams. I thought Thomas Williams changed the game with his speed, with his decision making, and also then on top of that, his accuracy, precision with the pass over to Rio Dyer. That is Thomas Williams to a T. The game suited him, it opened up, and then he partnered in with Johan Lloyd, who was able to do the same.
Yeah, I mean, I saw a couple of comments basically about Thomas Williams even having his perfect game because he was able to play 9 and 10 simultaneously, and Johan Lloyd was just sort of there more as almost an extra centre really, and chipping the ball on as needed. I think a lot of the play was dictated by Thomas. And it's the sort of game that suits him best. If you keep it loose and frenetic, he's going to have a field day, particularly if we can be punching holes. I thought we haven't really given enough praise for Domachowski for the full 80.
Yeah.
We can make all the things we can say about Kemsley Mathias, but it's I mean, I thought he was going well up until about the 75th minute. I think by then he, even no matter how chunky you think Matthias has been, I think Donchowski was out on his ass. Like he
Well,
literally gave everything.
he was blowing a gasket, and I think that's a really worrying sign for Helmsley, unless he's carrying a knock, that Gatland didn't trust him to play at all. I think it's a really worrying sign. And I know Nicky Smith's been in and out with fitness, but you can't tell me that Nicky Smith wouldn't have played. If he was fit, he'd have played 10 minutes at least at the end of that game, because Gatton would trust him. But I don't know what that was all about. But on the flip side, Donchak was brilliant. Ball carrying, there was a clip of his late tackle, not late tackle, but a tackle late on in the game on Hugh Jones in the outside channels, which was brilliant. And yeah, I thought altogether, on a selfish level for this pod, the Cardiff boys really did step up and perform well. I couldn't say that any one of them, and I don't think this is bias, bar Josh maybe with his moment of dumb that Gatland called it. I don't think any of them did themselves a disservice at all.
But even then, despite that, if you look at his stats, like the actual meters he made, the carry and things like that, considering the job he was being asked to carry, he did right. Weirdly, he made no tackles, according to the stats page on ESPN Scrum, which I don't think is right, and I feel like, but he didn't miss any, so it's like he didn't need to make any tackles. I don't know if that's because when Doohan did get the ball, it was in broken field in the middle, or Scotland just weren't going that way.
I'm thinking about it now. Most of the attacking play came down Wales's left with Rio.
Yeah, it came.
Yeah, and then they would switch and make the break through midfield.
Hmm.
So I can't think of when Josh would have had an opportunity to make a tackle.
I think he did. I think he did everything that was asked of him, and like when on the occasions when it went out, the kicks went to the right for cross kicks. They were just nowhere near him to chase. In fact, they were probably more Watkin or Tompkins' ball. Where it's put in. But then that's just going back to how inaccurate I think we were. Hugh Griffin made a point. He actually went and looked at basically where Costello was stood on all of these crossfield bomb things, and they were basically within inches of each other, which says to me, that was the plan. That's what they set up. My worry is they set up something that works well in training because you can do things very, very quickly. But I know from being the tackle bag holder on training runs. And because you're not going, you don't, when you're defending with the tackle bag, you can't put full speed in because you end up doing like 8-minute sets just holding this bloody bag. And and you're usually half number, so you've got to be passive to just get round, and you're more a target for the attack to hit. And it was, and you can be that bit deeper, you can do these things because you've got more time. And I do wonder if that was part of the issue, is they've sort of said, this works in training, when actually what you really need to be is that ball needs to be whipped out from the ruck as soon as it can, hoofed, and it needs to be enough time for your chasers to get there. But which obviously, if they have to stand that bit further back, because Costello's that bit further back, it takes even longer to get there, and then the opposition have more time to set up their blockers and stuff.
I understand kicking game. I've got an issue with the kicking game because if you're not getting go forward, which Wales weren't, crossing the game now, which Wales weren't, you're going to need to kick to gain territory. But there was one that was second phase off a line-out, and I was just like, oh, hold on a sec, I've seen this pitch before, and this was against Georgia at home. And that's what it reminded me of, and that's not exactly a great comparison. But yeah, maybe I think I could spend all day talking about the frustrations of the first half, and then you forget of how great the performance was in the second half, and how there's been a lot made of pride for a young team and all this sort of thing, and but I think there are a number of players showing pride. We've mentioned Elliot D, we've mentioned Thomas Williams, pride from players with a lot of experience, thinking, hold on a sec, we've got 22 years of history at this game. Let's not throw it away in the manner that we are. So, I thought second half they were brilliant in short, but Scotland certainly were in massive reverse and helping us out a bit. But I think I came out of that game thinking Wales should have won it, and maybe that is slightly rose-tinted, but there's a certain incident 74 minutes in, and you can't tell me that's not a seatbelt tackle. I struggle to think it's not on Tommy. I've only seen one angle, and I am seeing it through rose-tinted glasses, but that could have been the ball game. In short, if Johan's got his kicking boots on, which he seemed to be fair, after missing the first one.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, when you look at all his kicks, so Q put it up on Pirate Rugby Pod and showing about like expected kicking, and like the percent, other than the kick for Wainwright, the conversion for Wainwright's try, which was obviously right in front of the post, he's absolutely nailer. They were all about 40% success rates, predicted success. So you forget it, but yeah, if you'd got it, then you're like, oh, 28-27 final minute. Would Wales have played that a bit differently? Would Scotland have stepped up a bit sooner? Because, by the time that fourth try was in, then they're probably shitting themselves. Because, that fourth try for us was a 2-score, made it from a 2-score to a 1-score game. That would have put us in the lead. So.
But it's that moment, isn't it? I think that's why that high tackle was so important, that no call, because that was still Welsh momentum. And then, to be fair, Scotland did do well to close out the game in the way they did in the last 5 minutes. But I still think that was the ball game. But
yeah,
there was so many other incidents we could mention. We could mention the Luke Crosby hit on Sam Costello, which I thought was the correct decision by Ben O'Keefe, and also the Domachowski hit on Luke Crosby, which again I thought was the right decision by Ben O'Keefe. Yeah. So,
if we go, so obviously with Domachowski, there's the whole thing with the first couple of minutes he goes down injured. Basically, he just gets his head in the wrong place on the tackle.
Yeah, he caught. Was it Jamie Ritchie's hip? What to say?
Yeah, something like that, head on hip. So obviously, a lot of people saying he shouldn't be playing. He should be off for HIA. I've heard that from. I mean, the person I heard that from, I think, is more because he wanted his boy to be on the pitch. But I mean, we've got independent doctors, we've got team doctors. If they're not calling it, then I think we've just got to accept. Not every time you hit your head is going to be a concussion. I think we should be erring on the side of caution a lot more, admittedly. But I feel like if this is the way these guys, they're the ones with the data, I think now they've got the impact mouth guards as well. I don't know how effective they are. I haven't looked at the actual research itself. And that's the sort of shit I do look at. But at the same time, I feel like it's something that I almost feel we've gotten to a point now as a society, actually, which this is going to be a huge tangent, so please, just skip forward 20 seconds or so. We're starting to lose faith and trust in like scientists and medical professionals, and it's like, through the whole pandemic, it's like, look, this is their job. They know what they're doing. Let's just trust them for now. If it turns out they were wrong, then fine. But I certainly don't know any better. And it's all well and good. So some other members of this podcast who've said, "Oh no, I know it's my rule, so we should definitely do it." It's like, but no, you don't know. You don't know what's going on in there. You actually think you actually thought a scrum cap was actually for concussions, which they're absolutely not for. They're for protecting cuts on your face. But it was just, yeah. I mean, I could go rant and babble on for ages, but
I'll offer my 2 pence on this, which is I've heard mixed views on the impact math cards, but that's for another time. But the Domachowski thing, I was working on the game, and commentary said, he's been down for a long time. I was surprised he didn't go up for a HIA. I'll say that first and foremost. The second thing you say about the trust in the independent doctors, well, I've got to be honest, my trust is a little bit. I'm not wholly there with the system, and I'm not blaming individual doctors that are on the pitch. I'm just saying the system, I don't think is yet right at all, because I still remember that Thomas Francis incident for, what was it, 2 years ago? That was bloody shocking. There's no way that he should have continued. I can't, or was it 2 or 3 years ago? I can't remember if it was the home game or was the away game. But anyway, that was a horrendous incident. He should never have continued. There have been various incidents, Jeremy Loughlin, etc., since that have been poor. And then you flip it to the other side, and the way it is, I want a tactile word here, but the way the HIA rules are utilised, I'll use that word, by certain teams of a certain nationality typically, is rather frustrating. And I do look at it and I say, well, hold on a second, how can these two things be working concurrently and successfully? And that's my frustration with it. On this individual instance, he's clearly been past fit to play this week. There didn't seem to be any lasting effects, judging from his performance for the remaining 60 minutes or whatever it was. So I would say it seems like the correct decision was made by, one, the physios on the pitch, and two, the independent doctor off the pitch. But as you said, I think it is so important to err on the side of caution, because these are players' lives, and that's why I wish Sam Costello was playing, because he's an absolutely brilliant player. But on the flip side of that, I am so glad he's not appearing this week. I saw talk of him seeing a specialist, but once he's had the HIA in Perpignan a couple of weeks ago, he had the HIA and failed both against Scotland as well. Yeah, there's no way he should be playing this weekend, and I'm so glad to see him outside the 23, even though I think he's Wales' premier fly half at this stage.
Well, on that, it's a bit of an intro, because they've turned around and said it wasn't a HIA. He's got it's a neurological issue in his neck, which someone was telling me, oh, that makes it work. That they're just trying to get it so that you can play. I went, well, actually, no, because a neurological neck issue is what took Sam Warburton out of the game and Josh Navidi out of the game, and has taken a couple of other, but it's typically an open side injury. It's basically from having your head bashed in rucks.
Well, it was on the back of the Crosby incident, wasn't it? Which you can understand. They both
he's gone because he's gone over, because trying to jackal, it's bad for you. I can see why, things like that. It does make you see why people like progressive rugby are thinking maybe we should ban the jackal. Which actually I think I'm not fully on board with, but I get the point of view.
I get the point. I'm a big fan of a lot of things progressive rugby do, but I absolutely adore the jackal era. So it would be something I'd be really reticent to see leave the game. But yeah, safety has to come first. That's the main thing.
Yeah, I think I'm on the exact same point of view there. Anything else you want to say about the game this week? Well, last weekend even?
No, other than I feel Owen Watkins had a little bit of a bashing that he didn't deserve. That was the only other thing I thought. The only thing I thought he could have done was carry the ball a bit more, but defensively, I don't think he was as poor. People that's made it out, even though the tackle missed on Carwyn, I thought was a really clever piece of play by Scotland. / 5-10 years ago, that would have been called for crossing. But yeah, that's the only other thing I don't wanted to add.
No, I think the problem is I don't think you could have put anyone in at 30. You could put pretty much anyone in 13 for that game, and it wouldn't have looked like they'd done much, because the ball just wasn't getting there.
No.
Because if you look, Tompkins got a lot of passes, but that was more because he was coming in at first receiver, which is something that Wales have been doing in their shape to get the 10 a bit further wide. And then the ball was the winger, as something like that, or carrying ball. So I don't think he could have done much more to impose himself on the game. I'm not going to team selections, but
yeah.
Anyway, so we'll go from the up and down news of whatever was that game against Scotland, and we'll go to the sad news that broke a couple of days ago, which is the loss of Barry John. So the king, as he's affectionately known. A fixture of Cardiff for years, fixture of Wales, and up until the end, really. You could find him in the old arcade, drinking his Carlin. Both of us are too young to have experienced it. Basically, I was alive during the 90s, and Wales being a bit meh, and then I came in and I didn't start following rugby properly until about the 2005 Grand Slam, because glory supporter me. But all people I knew, everyone I knew growing up, it was always about Barry John. I don't know what I know you had to discuss it on the app anyway, but But one thing I do find that it's always never gets picked up as much, because everyone always talks about how he glided with the ball and stuff, was just how wonderful a game tactician, a game manager he was, and how good his kicking game was. For me, I reckon if Barry John came through now, he would be an Elite 10. Like, if you put into modern conditions stuff, he would be an Elite 10 because he had the brain for it. He had the brain, the skill. He was that perfect fusion of the tactician Dan Bigger and just the absolute X Factor box office of Jared. It's that wonderful, like absolutely everything you could want from your 10.
Yeah, I agree. So some people have questioned his tackling. I remember someone telling me a story that apparently he was told to just jump on people's backs, but I don't know if that was completely true. I've seen, recently, I think I had Sir Gareth Edwards talking about how he was tough as old nails and carried on playing after a broken nose, I think it was, in one game. And the amount of stories, and we are younger generation, we are talking about stories because we didn't have the privilege of watching him play. For anyone that does want to watch him play, I should also add, I think SVC are playing a charity game that Barry John played in I think it was his last ever game. His 15 against the Carwyn Jones 15. So if ever Carwyn James 15, always make that mistake. Carwyn James 15 versus Barry John's 15. If anyone wants to watch it, I think that's on Wednesday night. So tonight, as we're recording this pod at some stage. But from the stories, you throw it, I'll catch it. From being nicknamed the king by New Zealand, from New Zealand then taking the Lions' style of play and adopting it as their own for the next 50 years to dominate, which is both a blessing and a curse. But I think there's so many things about it. People talk about him in terms of rock stars, talk about George Best and the clips of them two passing the football together, and he was apparently a talented footballer as well. But for me, when I think of Barry John, it's as simple as thinking of those try clips, especially the try against England, that one where no one can lay a glove on him. And there's another one for, I think it's a Wales selectors 15, isn't it, where he glides past people as if they're not there. There's games for Cardiff where he slots 4 drop goals and to win a game. And there's that two sides to a fly halves game, which he seemed to master, as you correctly said. And it's really sad to see that he's gone. Him on the heels of JPR, on the heels of Clive Rowlands and Phil Bennett, but we are talking about some of the best players that have played of all time, and that's whether you're a Cardiff fan or whether you're a Waikato or Chiefs fan, you're going to think that Barry John was one of the best players that have ever lived, and that is as a glowing sentiment as you can say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't want to dwell on this too much, but so because there is a lot of other stuff, and James has asked me very nicely if we can get off early so that he can actually start doing the Cook Ospreys pod. So just a quick thing. So the under-20s won. They beat Scotland. Very good game. So bonus point victory if I remember rightly. I thought Lucas De La Rua looked. Both him and Morgan Morse showed how important getting these under-20s to have some senior rugby is being shown, because they looked a class above pretty much anyone else on the pitch. Morgan Morse had another one of his, just cutting through defences and just bastard.
The try's outrageous. It's just outrageous. It's just world class.
Yes.
But also, I would give a nod to Louis Hennessy, who I thought was brilliant. That offload, where I wonder if he did jump into the tackle, but I've given it to him because bloody hell, how he's got that offload off when he's 45-degree angle to the floor. It is brilliant to set up the try for. I can't remember which try that was to set up for, but yeah, brilliant, especially second half performance from Wales in the 20s, because they got done last year against Scotland. So for a number of those guys to come back and perform as well as they did, and a number of new players such as Harry Wild, I thought he, from a Cardiff element, he looked. I can understand why coaches are so excited about him. There were moments where he flitted in and out of the game. I think that's fair to say, and there's definitely things to improve on. But he's got a real knack of taking the ball to a line. He looks like an aggressive 10 in that aspect, but also I thought defensively he looked really solid, which is another prerequisite of the modern game.
Yeah, I think because then he hasn't had, although he's had some time for the Rags, he's not had a lot because our Robson's been doing the job for the last few weeks. So he looks like a player with a lot of talent who needs to get some rough edges polished off. That's good. I mean, how many times have we heard the story though that game's in the balance and then Ford comes off the bench to sort it all out. So Harry, I thought Harry Ford was excellent as well. To be fair, I thought most of the pack were pretty good. They did what they needed to be done. Harry Ackerman, I thought captained really well, and I thought he made a lot of good dents. That could be that Ackerman Hennessy partnership. I'd like to see that at a club level, where whichever team manages to get hold of both of them, that I think would be great to see develop over time because they both look incredibly physical, but can pass.
Yeah,
which is just one of those things. It just causes you, if you look at a sort of Henshaw, Aki Henshaw or McCloskey and Henshaw or Aki, the Hugh Piloto, they're very strong, powerful runners, but can also play a bit, and it just causes so many more problems.
Yeah,
so it'd be nice to see them kick on.
It seems almost like Wales have done a complete 180 on the way the players start performing. Because if we're talking 10 years ago, there were very few second rows and very few centres, and all of a sudden it's loads of second rows and loads of quality centres. Because you think of last year, it was Eddie James in that centre partnership, who was brilliant. And you've also got Grady the year before. You've got Hawkins as well. So it's
Joe Roberts as well. I mean,
yeah, it's becoming a real strength for Wales going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I said, because we're away of time. So we just want to quickly go over the team for England and do some predictions. And if we have time, let's see what questions are. I mean, it does tie into some of the questions we got. So I've lost who asked me the question. There we go. That's it. Sorry, yeah. Andrew Buhaiga. Sorry if I've got the pronunciation wrong. So he messaged on Facebook. So actually people do use it, which is surprising me. He asked, how harsh is it for Teddy Williams to be dropped? So obviously he had such a huge impact off the bench, but at the same time, this is where I was saying we've got quality. We've got four, what I read say, a decent international quality second rows in that squad, and we're picking three of them. And you're not going to drop Dav Jenkins. One, he's very good. Two, he's captain. Adam Beard is easily our best line-out operator. Yes, it went to shit in the first half, but then he's a key part in those maul tries. And then Will Rowlands is just he just had so much physicality and grunt that you almost whilst he's fit and able to play, you've got to make the most out of him, haven't you?
Yeah, well, I'd start Rowlands. But that's by the by. I think he's in such good form. He was absolutely brilliant for Racing against Cardiff. But the situation with Teddy is simple. You've got three players there who, let's be honest, 3 years ago, Adam Beard was being touted as a Lions starter for this upcoming tour to Australia. Dav Jenkins is now captaining his country, and Will Rowlands has been Wales' best player, arguably along with Jack Morgan, for the last 3 years. So it's difficult to see where he slots in. I thought the only possibility I saw was something that will rile you up, but if one of them was playing six, if Dav Jenkins or Teddy was playing six, I'm not pro that, but that was the way I saw you getting all four in the squad, and
that's that or 6-2.
Yeah, exactly, or a 6-2 situation, and with someone like Basham, who I think it's fair to say hadn't had his best form, it's not great. But simply put, Teddy doesn't cover the whole back row, and he hasn't played any back row this season. So how can you put him on the bench to cover a back row if you're not going for a 6-2 split? That's just the reality of the situation. It's think about the situation if James Fender was fit and the form he's been showing this season. If James Fender wasn't in either 23 for the first two games, how harsh that would be for him. But it would just be a reality of the situation where Wales currently have three outstanding second rows, well, Dav Jenkins is also an up-and-coming second row, but two other up-and-coming second rows who are going to be brilliant. So it's just the reality of the situation, sadly.
Yeah, so then the other big changes. So Gareth Thomas and George North coming straight into the side after their sort of fitness issues. I think it's a bit harsh on Damachowski, but also Gareth Thomas is, because none of us thought didn't realise he was injured. We all thought Gareth Thomas was starting last week anyway. This is how we see it. As much as I love Damachowski, Gareth Thomas has, he has the resume to show I am our number one Lucette prop, and I've got no issues with it. I said it's a bit harsh. I mean, it's not like Damachowski's been dropped. George North, similarly, him and Tompkins are our main partnership. They're the ones who've had the most time together. And, that sees Watkin drop at the 23 completely, which again is harsh. But then, are you going to take Grady off? Because I think he does have the potential to be such a good impact player, and covering 13 and wing does give him that extra bonus.
Well, he's got to be in the 23. So, as harsh as it is for Watkin, as I mentioned earlier on, that's again a reality of the situation. You've got a strength in the centres, which is where we are.
Yeah.
And then the other changes, Elliot D coming in for Elias. I think that's fair. I think Azarati coming in, Brown's obviously taking a knock, so he's come in to start, which I personally thought he should have started last week, and I don't mean that disparagingly. I just mean that on the evidence of how much rugby the three fighters have played this season. Hazarati, has played so much rugby compared to the other two, probably more, almost as much, if not more, than the other two combined. Which
I'd say easily.
Yeah, so I don't really see how you don't start him. And then Alex Mann obviously in for the injured Jim Botham, which if no one's caught the news, obviously Jim sadly picked up an injury in the game against Scotland, and he's out for the rest. Out for the rest of the tournament. Has that been confirmed? Just to double check.
He's been released from the squad, and they've called up Seb Davis. And Seb Davis is the reason why I'm getting so pissed off with them trying to put second rows at 6, because he got fucked about with so much. He basically just sort of stalled him as a player. He had the potential to become an absolutely wonderful loose head lock. Line-out caller, dynamic, wonderful hands. I would like him to, he's started to temper his aggression now into the right way. I'd like him to be a little bit more aggressive in contact and in tackle, which he's getting there. But, I felt he got dipped around with so much that it's just can we just let second rows develop? As you alluded to, we've been struggling for second rows for so long, particularly this hard-nosed, the hard-nosed one. We produce wonderful athletic locks, but trying to find ones who will just get through a shit ton of grunt work. It's been something like, I don't know, it's great that Teddy Williams and James Fender have come through at once. Reece Davis, I think, as well. Fits that Bradley Davis, Jake Bull mould as well. But then it's nice that Teddy Williams also has wonderful, skillful hands and, is actually a decent line-out option in his own right. That's my book. Then the other things, obviously, Yohan Lloyd and Thomas Williams start. So Costello's out. So Kai Evans comes onto the bench. But weirdly, Gareth Davis has been dropped entirely for Kieran Hardy. Now, the thing, my issue with this is, actually, for me, Hardy and Kai Evans, say it is as a half-back pairing, because I feel like if when it stays fit, he's going to play the full 80 at fullback. They are very similar players in that they are very kick. But there's not an inspiring choice.
Well, I'm not quite. I get a little bit where this Hardy as a kicking 9 has come into play, but I think that's come slightly on the back of that South Africa tour where Hardy was picked by Pivac, wasn't he, as first choice 9 for the kicking game, because it was felt that his kicking game was superior to the other two 9s. Personally, I think the 9 with the best kicking game we've seen this season has been Ruben Morgan-Williams, along with Ellis Bevan. Actually, I would give his kicking game worth mention because it has been brilliant this season. But Hardy, to me, is not solely a kicking 9, but my main issue with him and Gareth is they are both so out of form. and they have been for weeks for the Scarlets, and it's not. Lee on the Scarlets pod mentioned that Gareth Davis had a couple of good performances this year, but they just happened to be against Cardiff in their 2 wins. But there have been other games that I've seen, especially against the Ospreys, where Gareth Davis had a particularly bad game, and I find it difficult to see why Gareth has been dropped completely. Yes, he had a terrible first 40, and maybe he's been protected from a little bit or penalised for it. But I thought I think I'd like to see his experience on the bench is probably my main feeling on that one, is because I think he's performed so well in the World Cup that he's not a rubbish player overnight. It's just a player out of form.
And as we've said, like, no one particularly stood out. No one really covered themselves in glory in that first 40.
No.
What I said, he maybe was a victim of the game plan, but Thomas Williams came on, obviously. But I think that is what Thomas, and we've had it before when we've had Gareth Davis and Thomas Williams top in danger, and even when Hardy's in the mix, whoever comes off the bench always looks better. It's just what happens, and you get it with the 10s as well. But I do think Carwyn and Harley is out of the 3 scrum halves in the squad. He is the best box kicker anyway. I'd argue some of Thomas's attacking kicks are better than some of the 10s in the squad. Particularly Dinks on the top.
Don't start that.
I'm not calling for your love of the Thomas the 10 engine. All I'm saying is, like, it depends what kind of kicks. But for the classic scrum half kicking, so box kicking, Hardy is the best. He's the most consistent with hang time and distance, which makes it a lot easier for your chase. But I think because you've got him and Kai Evans on the bench, it does suggest that they're planning to slow the game down. But then you look and you've got you've got Tane Basham as your back row cover, and Mason Grady as your outside back cover, and you're like, well, they're players who are there to speed things up. And it just, if you put Watkin in the 23 and maybe another big, and maybe then you go for, and you do the thing I hate with someone like Teddy Williams in the 20 jersey. That to me then says, yeah, we're basically going to go as fast as we can against England, and then we're going to try and slow and control the game afterwards. But then at the same time, it's also, who else do you pick? We don't have.
I genuinely think that's the situation. I don't think there's. That sounds quite harsh, but the main thing I would say is you've got a ready-made situation where you bring Adam Beard onto the bench and put Rowlands into your starting lineup if you want to slow the game down in the final 20 and have control and have experience and have line-out operator and have more defence, all that jazz. That's your go-to. But there isn't that. So I just think it's a situation of these are the players that are fit, available, especially, and I don't mean that as disparagingly as it sounds in the case of Kai. He's in the squad. Gatland really wants him to be in the squad, and has had him in the squad in the last 2 or 3 now because of the Barbars game as well. But it is a byproduct of Sam Costello being injured, and I don't think anything much more. Sam Costello's fit. Sam Costello starts. Johan Lloyd's on the bench.
I agree with you there. I mean, one positive with Kai Evans is, if we've got penalties in that sort of 40-50 metre range and we just need to reel it in, you're giving it to him, because you can criticise many aspects of his game, but he is a phenomenal goal kicker. That's why he's been drawing a lot of Lee Halfpenny comparisons.
Yeah.
But I mean, to be honest, if you're that worried about goal kicking, just give it to Thomas. He did well enough against Connacht, which is the game coming up in it. Just previewing a game in 2 weeks' time.
I'm not even going to go down there, because I feel
I'm not
like
saying Thomas at 10. I'm saying Thomas as a goal kicker. There's nothing wrong with your 9 being a goal kicker. Do you know what, right? I mean, Canada women have their 8 as a goal kicker because she's phenomenal. I mean, she's Sophie Dagoudi, mine, so she can do whatever the she wants.
Yeah, that's completely different. Sophie Dagoudi's on a completely different level. Has just a totemic in rugby, as she just does it all. Like the song,
she's the true definition of a dynasty player.
yeah, well that too. But the songs she does what it wants is dedicated to Sophie de Goody, or should be, because yeah. But I don't know how we've gone to Sophie de Goody, but I'm glad we have, because how brilliant was she?
I'll tell you one thing, because if you've got an opportunity to talk about how good Sophie de Goody is, you talk about how good Sophie de Goody is, because she's that fucking good.
Yeah.
I mean, that Saracens pack full of all England and Wales internationals, and who's everyone talking about at the moment? Yeah. So I think. So how do you think the game's going to go? I can't imagine Borthwick doing too many changes to the team that beat Italy, and I imagine his game plan's going to be pretty much the same: aggressive defence, strong set piece, and he's just going to try and smother Wales. So the question is now, how do we get around that?
It's a difficult one, isn't it? Because the game plan is quite simple. It could be adapted slightly if Marcus is fit. I don't think he probably is. Genge is going to add another quality to the 23 if he starts or if he's on the bench. Luce said obviously he's a ball carrying machine and is brilliant at everything, or bar his mumbling on a certain recent documentary. But I think
he came out quite well on that documentary. Thank you. I like the two Welsh representatives. He's the only one who was supportive of the strike.
He does come across well. He just mumbles. That's my main issue. It's a broadcasting issue as opposed to a human being issue. I think he comes across as a good human being.
It's not mumbling. He's just from Bristol.
My mum would say he mumbles. But the separate thing is, I think I looked at that England performance. I thought Itoje looked good, and when Itoje's good, that's a bad sign for everyone else, because they do depend on him heavily for just creating absolute havoc and being a nuisance and a half. Ethan Root's playing well. That's surprising to someone who didn't quite see that potential in him, I must be honest, a year and a half ago. And then you've got Underhill and Ben Earl. Ben Earl's a brilliant player, but I don't think the rest of that back row is anything to fear for the Welsh back row. And I think if Tommy Raffel can get those turnovers in, I think that is going to be huge. It's whether Raffel can get those turnovers that can stop England's momentum at source in the pack. That is going to be a huge benefit for Wales, and that's one of the things. And then hope on a bit of England indiscipline. But the simple point is, if Wales are as inaccurate and as ill-disciplined as they were in the first 40 against Scotland, there's only one winner. And they just can't afford to start as slowly as they did. There's not much else to say, really. I don't think.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right there. I think as well, like, if we were worried about the line out against Scotland, having Itoje and Chesham, and I think Earl as well has been known to be thrown up there as well, that's going to be the problem. They're probably going to be a lot more attacking in the scrum, which I know the Scottish front row is quite attacking anyway, but they also hold back when they think they're going to get pinged. I think like the English will push and just hope for it. Which does bring on the one person on the bench he didn't really mention is Archie Griffin, who will get the third new cap should he come onto the field. So congratulations to him. I've not seen a lot of him, but he is highly rated at Bath. So it'll be interesting to see how he goes. Apparently he's a lump, and that's quite useful at tight head.
He must have learned a few things from his time at Bath with the two that are ahead of him. Yes, one happens to start for England, which is never quite what you want to see, but I think it's a good sign. I think it's a good sign for him, for his future, that he's having those two. Is it Wilco Lowe? Who's at Bath?
Bath. So he would be behind Will Stewart, and it's Thomas Toy usually at tight.
Thomas Toy. I always mix up Toy and Wilco Lowe, which is
no. Wilco Lowe is currently playing for the Bulls, because if you remember a few pods ago, I basically declared my own love for Wilco Lowe.
We've discussed it plenty of times. I don't know why I'm confused, but yeah,
I think
the
it's just because
toy.
we do talk about him so much.
I thought I'd get to mention it, but yeah, to Toy and Will Stewart on a bad pairing to learn off.
And then going up against in training with like the likes of Benno Obana, probably Thomas Toy as well, because he does play both sides equally well.
yeah,
You know, and who's the other bugger? Who's the other one?
Schumann.
That's Edinburgh.
No, there's another Schumann.
Oh, there's. Oh, don't lie to me.
I'm pretty sure there's a Schumann at Bath, and now I've said it, I want to back myself up, so I'm gonna Google
Yeah,
it
so
quickly.
I should read that, but yeah, so I feel like yes, he's only third choice, but I think in a team like Bath, being third choice still says you're pretty decent. You're just not as good as the headline players. So good for him. He's going to have a big job coming off the bench as the full starting pack are going to be, because let's be fair, England are going to want to put a marker down. It doesn't matter what Borthwick says about them trying to play. Everything we've seen suggests they still want to dominate and they still want to be kicking well. So I think Carwyn is going to get a much sterner test as a Dyer and Adams. I think with our own kicking game, because we are going to have to kick, we've got to find ways of making Steward think we're kicking it in a different place than we are, or we're going to have to change how we kick. It can't be these crossfield bombs. I think it's going to have to be dinks over the top with this. They're going for an ultra aggressive with Felix Jones, the ex-Springbok coach. They're going for extra aggressiveness because they want to take out the decision makers early. So we either got to be incredibly accurate at getting our passing game and standing deep and getting around them, or we're going to have to try and slow that line speed by getting behind them. And, they don't really follow sweep because not many teams do have the 9 sweeper anymore. They're much more the Gareth Davis shootout or Thomas Williams, who acts as a third centre in the fifth line and almost organises and acts, is there to add physicality. So I think that's where it's going to go. A lot of people say we should play like we did in the second half against Scotland. I'm not sure, like just throwing it with reckless abandon is going to work in the first, certainly not for the first 60. So I think, we do have to be not necessarily timid, but pragmatic. Go when it's on, but don't just go throwing the ball, going coast to coast willy-nilly and going backwards.
My main issue with that is I don't think we've got the players to be pragmatic. I think
this is the problem. I do agree, because we don't really have a control. I would say none of our backline are a tactical kicker.
Yeah, if Wales go toe to toe in a pragmatic game against that England side with George Ford at 10 and Freddie Stewart at 15, they lose. I don't see any way that you win the kicking battle as a straight up kicking battle. I don't see that they get enough forward dominance. I think they could get parity. I don't see forward dominance in spades. And then I possibly George and Tompkins could do some stuff in the centres, but I wouldn't be like wouldn't pin yourself on that. So I think the kicking game is important, but I think it's the way they kick, and they have to find ways of manipulating Stewart for one, ways of isolating Freeman as another one, because he is still young in the international scene. Likewise, Dingwall if he plays to isolate him as well, but chips over the top are going to be crucial.
And Davey usually has absolute dick fingers when it comes to high balls, which is really weird. Like, he should be so much better under them than he is.
Just put him 1-on-1 against Josh Adams. It worked once, it'll work again. That's all he needs.
It'll work every time. It's worked multiple times. Just give Josh Adams a cross kick on a tap penalty, and we'll get a try that way. But this is where I think you basically hit what I was saying when I was trying to say be pragmatic. I don't mean pragmatic by getting into a kicking duel, because that's not pragmatism, that's stupidity. What I'm saying by being pragmatic is don't just pass the ball, but that's what I'm saying, the kicks over the top, or just doing, neat little grubbers. It's doing things that their defense isn't going to be set up to do. That's what I'm saying being pragmatic. Is, playing percentages, like a kick over the top actually is becoming a much higher percentage play because of how everyone defends. Whereas actually, with our personnel, the classic box kick probably is a very low percentage play for us, because we just don't have the personnel for the chase and the tackle.
Or simply put, if you're going to kick the ball to Freddie Stewart, rubber it, because there's no point putting it in the air. Like, that sounds a bit stupid, but it might cause a bit if it rains, it'll cause a bit of chaos, and that's just finding different ways to target him that is out of the ordinary.
I would say there was one caveat, but that was but we've got the wrong selection for it. If we had Mason Grady on the wing, this is where I will concede. Then kick high balls to him all day, because I'd back Mason Grady over Freddie Stewart.
Oh no.
Mate, they're the same height. Grady actually has pace. That's where I'm drawing it. And some of the high balls he's taken for Cardiff, I reckon at least becomes a 50-50 again. As opposed to, I think most people going up against Stewart is a 90-10 at best.
I'm going to disagree, because I think Freddie Stewart is the best catcher a rugby ball there's ever been. But that's a side note.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think the best has ever been.
We're going to start
the best playing now.
Yeah, the best playing now, certainly. But we're going to start disagreeing right at the end of the pod, where we've agreed for most things. And the second thing we're going to disagree on is Wan Schoeman does play for Bath. So there we go. Yeah.
I don't believe. I think that's an NFT. That's not a real player, which has become the theme of the pod the last few months.
Yeah.
I think time is running short, so I'm going to quickly push you for prediction. I believe you said England by 6 on the wrap. Do you want to stick with that?
I said England by 3. I'm going to stick to it. I don't want to. I think Wales can win, but I favour England.
Well, we're back to harmony on the pod, because I'd say England by about 3 as well.
There we go. For a way to
end. Sorry for everything Cardiff Rugby. We didn't have time for your question. What we might do is we might stick it up as we might retweet it and put it as a poll. So he was asking about which players from other Six Nations squads would you take to come play for Cardiff and be thing. Very quickly off the top of my head, I'd go Tyburn. I would have WP now. Italy, I would love Rutzer. Just because baller's going to ball. France, weird one. I would love Gabby and Villiers. I know it's me going for the Cardiff tradition of tarty backs, but I just love Gabby and Villiers. And we're talking about backline jackal threats. England, don't want any of them, to be honest.
I'd take Ollie Lawrence in a heartbeat. I'm sorry, but I would take Ollie Lawrence.
I'll be honest, if out of all of them, George Ford for me.
Sorted. Don't need him.
Yeah. No, who needs George Ford? We've got Tinas.
Tinas and Sheedy. There we go.
Yeah. Right, so I think I said
Heedy.
Unfortunately, we didn't have a chance to go into the pardon?
I said Heedy. That's bad. Let's move on. Heidi, to be fair, does worse, but let's move on. Let's move on quickly, please.
No, let's just linger on that.
I did
one.
say that at the start.
Unfortunately, we didn't have enough time to check with the to talk about. Unfortunately, Rags lost to the Drovers on last Thursday night. After me getting very excited about our good lead, which makes me realise I should never be excited about anything ever and should always be miserable. Pontypridd beat Merthyr.
Other way around.
Merthyr beat Pontypridd. So it looks like Merthyr's got a decent shot of overtaking Cardiff in the 4th place spot for the knockouts. The under 18s, Cardiff under 18s men got the win over. I
can't remember. I must be honest.
I'll just basically So they got their first win of the campaign. That's knocked them up, so they're guaranteed 3rd. With the title to be decided between the game this week between Scarlets and Ospreys, and the under 18s women also finished 3rd. So nice consistency, which is a rarity from Cardiff.
Yeah.
And I said, well, if people want to hear about other ones, maybe we'll I don't know, maybe I'll convince Carwyn to do a sort of YouTube short to sort of give a rundown on what he thinks of the Premiership situation at the moment. If he's not fed up of talking to the cameras yet. Anyway, all that leaves is say thank you for listening, and thank you to my co-host Carwyn for dealing with my ramblings.
No ramblings, all harmony, all happy. We're happy leaving the pod, aren't we?
Yes, as Liam pointed out, we are the best pod.
Yeah.
That wasn't us saying it, that was a listener. So
I was
anyway,
going to take full credit for that, but I won't.
I was going to say, if anything, I'll bring it down. So, I'm happy with that. Anyway, good night all.
Thank you for listening to the Cardiff Central podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. Please subscribe, rate and review wherever you listen to us, as it really helps spread the word. You can find us on all the usual social media channels or email us on welshregionalrugbypod@gmail.com. And remember, whatever the question is, rugby is always the answer.
Sports Social Podcast Network.